Get ready for a dark and chilling journey. If you're a fan of intense stories filled with mystery, monsters, and dark magic, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into the tale of the Faceless Hunter, a man cursed, battling his own essence and facing forces beyond human comprehension. From ancient pacts to monstrous creatures and fallen gods, are you ready to learn the true price of the hunt? If you enjoy stories like this, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any epic adventures like this one. Let's uncover the secrets of this journey of pain, power, and redemption together. Now, get ready, because the Faceless Hunter is about to lead us down a path where the darkness never fades.
The forest breathed like a sleeping beast. The wind crawled between the twisted trees, groaning softly, and every trunk seemed to lean just a little further, as if listening to something the mortals could not hear. The leaves creaked in unison, forming a choir of lamentations that never ceased. It was a place where the night never fully dissipated. Even when the sun rose, only a pale veil of light dared to touch the damp ground. They said that the Faceless Hunter walked there, a shadow cloaked in worn leather, corroded iron armor, and a heavy mask sealed to his skull with chains. No one knew his name, his origin, or even if he was still man or beast. Some swore they had glimpsed him in passing, broad shoulders, heavy steps, and a silence so thick that even the birds died when he passed. That night, the silence preceding his arrival fell over a village on the edge of the forest. The crackling of torches sounded distant, muffled, as if the air had thickened. A child woke, crying, and her mother covered her mouth in desperation, whispering an ancient prayer. On the horizon, the dry sound of snapping branches echoed. 1, 2, 3 steps. Something was approaching. The hunter appeared, emerging from the mist as if made of it. His presence was suffocating. The iron mask had no visible eyes, but everyone felt the weight of a gaze that pierced through bones and memories. The chains that held the helm rattled as he moved. In his right hand, a broad blade carved with symbols no one dared to decipher. In his left, a bow whose strings seemed made of human tendons. He did not speak. He never spoke. But where he passed, rumors were born. "The hunter is here," murmured an old man in the village, his voice broken. "That means the night will bleed." And indeed, the trees trembled. The wind brought the scent of rotting flesh, and a guttural howl pierced the darkness. Ancient creatures, forgotten in the earth's holes, were awakening. It was for them that he walked. It was for them that his curse existed. The forest leaned in to listen. The people shrank in fear, and the hunter moved forward toward the sound. The first hunt of that night was about to begin.
The moon climbed heavy in the sky, hidden behind veils of clouds, casting an unhealthy glow on the forest. The hunter moved forward, and every step seemed to weigh twice as much on the soaked ground. The scent of decay grew stronger, mingling with the metallic odor of wet earth. Then came the sound, a crack, like bones being broken, then a rough scratching, like claws on the trunk of a tree. He raised his head. From above, among the twisted branches, 2 yellow lights watched him. They were not animal eyes. They were glowing slits, hot as embers, set in a misshapen body. The creature slowly descended, leaning on 2 long limbs, covered in scaly skin that seemed to have been ripped off and wrongly replaced. It was a swamp being, one of the aberrations that fed on the dead buried in shallow waters. Its mouth split into 4 parts, revealing rows of short, serrated teeth. The hunter had faced many like it, but each one was different, shaped by mud, blood, and the darkness that birthed them. The creature howled, and the sound echoed throughout the forest, as if calling witnesses to the massacre. The hunter did not respond. He simply planted the tip of his blade into the ground, steadied himself, and prepared his bow. He drew the string with the calm of one who no longer knows haste. When he released, the arrow sliced through the air and pierced the creature's shoulder, drawing a sharp screech. It fell to the ground, but did not retreat. It lunged forward, faster than something so grotesque should move. The hunter rolled to the side, raised his sword with both hands, and blocked the attack. The impact made the blade vibrate like a profane bell, and the iron mask trembled on his face. The battle was short and brutal. Claws against iron, mud against flesh, shadows against shadows. When the blade finally cut through the monster's neck, the world seemed to sigh. The creature fell, convulsing, its black blood spreading across the ground, soaking roots and buried bones. The hunter, however, did not celebrate. With every victory, there came a price. His mask began to pulse, emitting a low hum, like the beating of a strange heart. Chains rattled, and a burning heat ran through his flesh. He felt, as he always did, something escape from within him, a piece of his soul sucked away by the curse. For a moment, he saw through the darkness, deformed hands emerging in his mind, voices whispering in dead tongues. The beast inside him smiled, trying to take more space. But the hunter gripped the sword until his fingers cracked and moved forward, leaving the corpse to rot in the gloom. The night was still not over. The creature's body decayed too quickly, as if the forest itself were eager to devour it. The hunter pressed on, but each step felt as though molten iron coursed through his veins. The mask vibrated, not only sucking at his soul, but also bringing forth memories he never wished to recall. Fragmented images tore through his mind, an altar covered in candles, a blade plunged in blood, voices chanting words that did not belong to men, and above all, the gaze of a forgotten god. It wasn't a complete memory, but a mosaic of pain. He saw himself kneeling before a circle of runes carved into the ground, surrounded by monks in black robes. Each one held a torch, and in the center, a shadow larger than any man awaited. Its outline shifted like smoke, but the eyes were clear and endless, like bottomless wells. The voice of that entity echoed inside his head, not in his ears. Hunt for me, bleed for me. Every beast that falls, every evil that succumbs will be my feast, and in return you will live when all others die. The young man he once was, still human, still whole, accepted, not for glory, but for fear. The forest in those days already devoured entire villages. The pact seemed the only way to protect the living. He offered blood on the altar, plunged the blade into his own chest, and when he raised his head, the mask was already sealed to his face. The curse began there. With each monster slain, a fragment of his soul fed the fallen god. And with each soul lost, the beast within him grew, taking shape in the shadows.
The hunter stopped before a clearing overtaken by mist. He breathed deeply, trying to push the memories away, but the echo of the voice still pursued him. "You are neither hero nor martyr. You are only my hunter." The wind blew through the trees, cold and damp, as if repeating the sentence. And for the first time in a long while, the hunter felt a flicker of doubt. Was there still something human beneath the iron and chains? The forest did not answer. It merely whispered, as always.
Crossing the forest, the hunter reached a grey valley where the fog never dissipated. Amid barren fields and rotting wooden houses rested a village too silent. There were no voices, no laughter, no cries, only the wind scratching against hollow rooftops. The few inhabitants that remained were old, with deep-set eyes and skin marked by sickness. They stared at him as if they had been expecting him. No one ran, no one tried to hide, only resigned looks, as if they knew death comes in many forms. The hunter walked through the empty streets. He observed open doors, broken toys, abandoned cradles. The absence weighed heavier than any scream. There were no children, none. It was an old man who approached, leaning on a crooked cane. His lips trembled, but the voice came out firm. "We knew you would come, hunter. The forest always sends its monsters and its jailers." The hunter did not respond. He simply waited. The old man continued. "Our crops dried, our women fell ill. Then the entity of the woods offered us prosperity in exchange for innocence, a young life to feed its roots. And with each sacrifice, the fields flourished again." He looked around at the empty huts. "For decades we gave our children. Now there are none left. The debt, however, has not ended." The air grew heavier. The hunter smelt it, iron, rotten, as if the blood soaked into the walls of the village had never dried. From the forest, something stirred. Huge roots began to rise from the ground, writhing like serpents. At their center, a black trunk opened, revealing a damp, pulsating mouth from which echoed a lament that was not human. The old men fell to their knees, some crying, others laughing like madmen. "The tree comes to claim its debt," said the elder. "But we have nothing left to give. Perhaps you will." The hunter raised his sword. The forest did not only want innocence, it wanted flesh, it wanted soul. And now it wanted to taste its hunter. The first root advanced. The battle against the hungry tree had left scars. The roots had coiled around his flesh, trying to tear not just his body, but something deeper. The hunter cut, burned, and shattered the living trunk until it collapsed, releasing a muffled scream that echoed through the woods. When it was over, the elders were dead, crushed by the very roots they swore to serve. He walked alone, as always, but with each step, he felt the beast within him grow stronger, as if it had fed on the same corrupted flesh. It was then that he found the ruins. Among broken columns and altars covered in mold lay an ancient mirror, cracked into 1,000 fragments, bound by an iron frame. Despite the filth and centuries, it still reflected. The hunter approached and saw what he should never have seen. The reflection did not show a man. On the other side of the broken glass, the creature had hunched shoulders, arms too long, and claws sharp as fingers. The mask was fused to the flesh as if it had been born with it. The eyes, two embers burning in the darkness. The hunter raised his hand, and the reflection did not follow. Instead, the figure smiled, a wide, impossible smile, full of teeth. The cracks in the mirror began to expand, snapping like broken bones. The figure moved on its own, advancing toward the other side, trying to cross. The voices in his mind multiplied, each fragment of glass whispering a different word in a language that ate at reason. "Free me." The hunter staggered back. He gripped the sword so tightly that the knuckles of his fingers cracked beneath the leather gloves. But the eyes of the reflection followed him, burning, both pleading and commanding at once. He raised the blade, and with a single strike, shattered the mirror. Shards scattered across the ground, reflecting hundreds of monstrous faces, all his, all smiling. For a moment, he stood paralyzed. The beast inside him was no longer just a presence, it was a promise. And silently, he realized there was no hunting monsters without becoming one.
The night fell thicker than ever, and the forest seemed to close in on itself. The hunter walked in silence, but the air around him vibrated with a strange tension, as if the world itself awaited an inevitable encounter. Rumors had guided him there. Mass deaths of villagers, mutilated bodies, trees marked with symbols identical to those that burned on his own blade. It was not the work of beasts. It was not the work of gods. It was the work of something that walked like him. And he found it. In a valley surrounded by rocks sharp as fangs, a man waited for him. Or rather, what had once been a man. He wore tattered armor, covered in dried blood, and on his face a mask of iron identical to his, but fused to the skull as if it had been swallowed by the flesh. The eyes were different, red, vibrant, filled with the flame of the inner beast that had already taken control. The hunter knew what he saw. A cursed one like him, a brother of the pact, and also a warning of what he was destined to become. Liberator? The other's voice sounded scratched, metallic, as if coming from inside the mask. Silence was the only reply. The battle began like a distorted mirror, sword against sword, bow against bow. Each movement, each strike was like fighting his own shadow. The blades clashed, sparking darkness, and the forest bowed before the impact. The other hunter did not fight with strength alone, but with the fury of surrender. There was no resistance within him, no humanity to preserve. The beast guided his arms, his breath, his hatred. The hunter blocked, retreated, counterattacked, but each strike showed him the future. If he gave in, if he tired, if he let the beast take the reins, he would become exactly that. Finally, with a quick movement, he managed to drive the sword into the heart of the enemy. The other fell to his knees, laughing with a dry laugh that echoed like iron against stone. "You did not kill me. You merely inherited me." When life drained from the body, the darkness that inhabited it detached itself, lunging at the hunter. He staggered, the chains of his mask clinking, the inner beast roaring in pleasure. Part of it had grown stronger. Part of him had died. The hunter lifted his eyes to the night sky, devoid of stars, and for the first time, he felt that perhaps he wasn't fighting the monsters of the forest, but fighting himself.
After leaving the body of the other cursed one rotting in the valley, the hunter walked for days without finding a single soul. The forest grew denser, as if it wanted to swallow him whole, until one dawn veiled in smoke, he saw lights in the distance. A stone wall rose before him, tall, rough, marked by ancient burns. Silent guards watched from the parapets, but no one tried to stop him as he approached. It was as if they already knew him, or as if they were waiting for something worse. The city inside was not like the others. There were no laughs, no markets, no children running, only ashes covering the ground and the constant smell of burned flesh. In the center, a black tower exhausted eternal smoke, and at its top, a flame burned that never went out. The people walked with their heads lowered, their pale faces covered in soot. Among them, monks in red robes circled with torches, chanting low hymns that made the air vibrate. The hunter followed to the central square, where a stone circle surrounded a colossal pyre. The fire there was taller than houses, more alive than any natural flame. People knelt before it, murmuring prayers. One of the monks approached. His eyes were covered by hardened ashes, as if he had blinded himself on purpose. "Stranger," he said, his voice too calm, "the light keeps the darkness away. It is fire that purifies. It is fire that protects." The hunter did not answer. He merely observed. The monk smiled, almost proudly. But to keep the flame from ever dying, it must be fed. Two guards dragged a prisoner to the circle. It was a young woman, tied up, her mouth covered with a cloth. Her eyes screamed terror. Without hesitation, the monks threw her into the pyre. The fire roared loudly, like a satisfied beast, and the faithful knelt lower, in ecstasy. The hunter clenched his sword. They were not monsters of the forest. They were not aberrations born of mud or blood. They were men, men who sacrificed innocence to feed their light. The blind monk turned to him, his face illuminated by the flame. "There is no darkness here, hunter, only purity. Join us or be consumed." The hunter's mask clinked, the chains rattled. He knew that this city was more rotten than any beast he had ever slain, and that on this night the fire would drink a different blood. The flame of the tower burned behind him as he left the ruined city. The ground still smoldered, bodies scattered, and the fire, ironically, seemed more alive than ever. Not the fire of purification, but the fire of destruction. The hunter had turned the monk's own weapon against them. But something inside him had changed. Each cut he had made, each life he had taken in that square, had fed not just his blade, but the beast chained in his soul. He felt it. He felt it when he closed his eyes, the heat of the mask against his skin, the chains vibrating as if they were living fangs, and a breath that was not his echoing inside his head. On the first night, he dreamed, or thought he dreamed. He was standing before a black mirror, different from the one he had shattered, but in it, he didn't see himself as a man. He was the creature from the reflection, now free, walking toward him. Each step made the earth tremble, each breath made the sky darken. He woke gasping, his hands covered in blood, fresh blood. He looked around, no enemies, no beasts, only trees and the carcass of a deer torn into pieces he did not remember hunting. In the following days, control slipped away. His vision sometimes turned red, his arm moved on its own, and the sword vibrated as if it were an extension of the beast. There were moments when he heard his own voice, not his, but the beast's, speaking through the mask. Do not resist. The strength is yours. The hunger is mine. Together we are eternal. On a moonless night, the beast took more than it should. As he walked, the hunter fell to his knees, the chains clinking as if they were laughter. His flesh throbbed, and claws sprouted from his fingers for moments. The ground beneath him cracked when he slammed his hand into the earth, leaving marks too deep for a human. He fought to breathe, to maintain control, but the truth was clear. With each monster hunted, with each life taken, the beast was not just inside him, it was becoming him. And for the first time, the hunter doubted if he had the strength to defeat it. The road led him to the mountain. Not an ordinary mountain, but a wall of black stone that seemed to tear through the sky. No birds flew there, no animals dared approach. The air was heavy, filled with ashes and dust, as if the very earth was decaying from within. At the top, between broken columns and forgotten temples, there was an altar, and upon it a shadow awaited. The hunter felt the weight of that presence long before he saw it. His whole body trembled, not with fear, but with recognition. It was like coming home, only to discover that his home was made of bones. The last god rose before him. It had no defined form. Sometimes it seemed like a colossal man with multiple arms, other times like a mass of darkness with fiery eyes scattered across every fold. Its voice came not from any mouth, but echoed in the mind, in the bones, in the very mask of the hunter. My servant, my predator, my son. The words tore through his chest more than any blade could. The hunter drove his sword into the ground. Silence was his response, but the god laughed, a laugh that made the mountain tremble. You hunted in my name. You fed me with every soul reaped. Every beast, every man, every innocent that fell before you belongs to me. You are no hero. You are harvest.
The chains of the mask rattled, the iron pulsed hot, as if alive, trying to open itself. The hunter fell to his knees, struggling against the pressure. The beast within him roared in triumph, as if it were just another extension of that god. "Free me completely," the entity said, "and you will know eternal power. Resistance is futile." The hunter raised his eyes. For the first time he let out a sound, not a word, but a hoarse growl, a mixture of man and beast. He knew deep down that all his journey had been was the path to this moment. He had not hunted monsters, he hunted to feed a fallen god. He was not a hero, he was an instrument. And the question that burned inside him was not whether he could destroy the god. It was whether he had the courage to destroy himself for it. The mountain trembled, the altar glowed in bright red. The end was near. The altar burned bright red, and the mountain seemed to pulse like a living heart. The last god extended its many arms, calling the hunter for the final surrender. The chains of the mask vibrated violently, and the iron burned against his skin, as if it wanted to open on its own. The hunter raised his sword. His hands trembled, not with fear, but from the internal struggle that had already consumed him. The beast roared within him, begging to be unleashed. The entity, immense and formless, promised infinite power if he would simply drop the blade. "You have been mine since the first blood. Without me, you are nothing." The words echoed like thunder, but for the first time, the hunter replied. His voice came out rough, metallic, as if from deep within the mask itself. "I was never yours." Then he drove the blade not into the god, but into himself. The iron pierced his chest, and immediately the chains broke, bursting like freed serpents. The mask cracked in glowing lines, releasing the light, or perhaps the darkness that had been trapped inside. The last god roared in fury. The shadows stirred, trying to hold the hunter, but it was too late. The face behind the mask began to reveal itself. It was not entirely human. It was not entirely beast. It was both, fused into twisted flesh, a being born of the pact and the resistance. His eyes burned like embers, but there were tears, the first in a long time. With his final breath, the hunter pushed the sword deeper. The mountain trembled, cracking, and the colossal shadow of the god began to crumble. Its screams echoed like 1,000 voices being torn at once. The ground split open, the altar collapsed, the sky turned black. And then silence. When the dust settled, there was no more god, no more mountain. And where the hunter had fallen, only the echo of broken chains scattered in the wind remained. No one ever found his body. Some say he sacrificed himself to seal the last god forever. Others believe that the beast, finally freed, walks without the mask through the night, lurking, waiting for the next pact. The only certainty was the whisper of the forest. Always the forest, always watching, always remembering the faceless hunter.